thanks so much for coming, and welcome to our first FemX Talks, the FemX Talk of the year. So, in case you don't know, Feminist Society this year are launching a YouTube channel called FemX Talks, and the speaker series for this year will be filmed and put on that YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch tonight's event online. So please, like, share, subscribe, share with everyone, and hopefully we can get some really good discussion going and kind of make feminist issues a lot more accessible. So we have a great speaker tonight called Gill Nowland from the charity 125. So I'll let her do a sort of better introduction when she speaks a little bit later on. We're going to watch a clip from the charity first, though, about street sex work. Gill will speak for... and then we'll have a couple of questions afterwards, just in case you'd like to ask anything. So, thanks very much.
It's almost like I was out of myself completely. Your whole persona changes, even your name changes, as if you're somebody else. People may say that you work the streets, because underneath it could resemble what I went through as a child, the abuse. But I had to go out to do street work to feed my drug addiction. It's a vicious cycle. The men, they make you feel worthless. It takes your self-confidence away. That's why I had to stop. I used to live in the dark, The night hours was when my life began. But I'm ready for daylight. I don't want to hide myself away for the next 10 years. I'm completely ready for change. I know there is definitely something more out there for me. Yeah, I want to travel. I want to go college. I want to become a counsellor and really do something that I never had given to me as a kid. I feel really strong and prepared to do it. It's just going to take a while. But I won't stop till I get to that point.
So it's lovely to be here tonight. I'm just going to start by saying street sex work is a choice that's made out of no choice. So I'm Gill Nowland, I'm CEO at 125. My journey with 125 started 16 years ago when I became a volunteer on the outreach van, which I'll talk about in a moment. I then took a post in 125, very front line, working with the women in our drop-in centre back in 2004. I've worked in various posts in 125 and I've been CEO for 7 years. So I want to tell a story tonight. I'm going to tell a story of a lady called Crystal. Crystal's not a real woman, but her story is a typical story. And I'm choosing to tell this story of not a real woman because I want to talk about the needs of the women. I want to talk about the work we do, but I want to put it into some context. So I think a story always helps with that. So Crystal I'm going to start Crystal's story. She's 20 years old now, let's assume, but I'm going to start when she was 5 years old. And Crystal was being sexually abused by her stepfather, and she was regularly witnessing domestic violence against her mother. And by the time Crystal was 9 years old, she'd been removed from her home and placed in foster care. And that was the first of many foster care homes, because Crystal wasn't an easy child. She wasn't particularly a likeable child. Her behaviour was challenging. She challenged her foster parents, and she challenged her teachers. So life was not easy for Crystal. Throughout her secondary education, she truanted. She had very little education. She left school after GCSEs with no qualifications, no GCSEs. And she then moved in with a boyfriend who was quite abusive, but Crystal had normalised that. To Crystal, she didn't know any different. So that was the relationship she was in. By that age, she was dabbling mainly in recreational drugs and alcohol, and maybe getting involved in some petty crime to fund that habit, along with her boyfriend. And for a few years, that's how life went on for Crystal. By the time she was 20, her drug habit had escalated. She was starting to take much harder drugs, crack cocaine, heroin, getting involved in more crime to fund that habit. But she always feared arrest, so she was looking for a way to earn money where she was less likely to be arrested for crime. Her boyfriend, however, was involved in heavier crime and was in and out of prison. So Crystal's now 20 years old, got a life-controlling drug habit, in very poor health, both mentally and physically. She's never had a job, she's got no qualifications. So life's not good for Crystal. And she knows people who are out on the streets selling sex to fund their habit. She's avoided this so far. It's not something she's wanted to do, but her boyfriend starts to push her. Both of their drug habits are costing them maybe in the region of £200-300 a day. And where's that money going to come from? So he starts to persuade her, and she sees other people doing it, and eventually she gives in, and she reluctantly goes out onto the streets for her first night street sex working. I can't imagine how she must feel. I'm sure she was full of fear, full of anxiety, but also pretty desperate, and she knew she had quite an abusive partner waiting in the wings for her to bring those drugs home. So that's very typical as women we work with. And 125, we meet women in that situation every week. So let's assume that we're out 125 on our outreach van, 3 volunteers. We go out about 9 o'clock at night and we drive around till around midnight, and we see Crystal on the streets, and we pull up our van because she makes some eye contact with us, and we suspect she's working. We've never met her before. She climbs onto the van quite nervously at first because she hasn't really engaged in trusting relationships. And who are these 3 women? Even though she's been told about our service, she's a bit suspicious of us. And she takes a seat, she takes a food bag and a hot drink. And she's shown for the first time in her life some people who are caring, loving, non-judgmental, and interested in her life but not in a pushy way, wanting to support her but not pushing her. So one of the workers sits down and just gently tries to find out if she's got somewhere safe to sleep that night, if she's got any particular needs, to tell her about the services available in 125. So we start by saying, well, there's a drop-in centre. You can come down to our drop-in centre, and what's on offer there? We tell her the hours it's open, we give her a little card. She starts to tell us that she's got a boyfriend, and we suspect by the bruises on her body and the way she's talking that she's in an abusive relationship. So we give her a little card telling her about our caseworker who specialises in violence and abuse. So she leaves that van that night with a little bit of hope, a little glimmer of hope, maybe for the first time in many years, that there is someone out there who cares. So over the weeks, Bristol continues to engage with 125 outreach, and she continues to build a relationship with us. She hasn't yet built up the courage to step into drop-in, but that's fine, that will take time, and we just keep encouraging her to do that. One night she gets on the van and she tells us that she's just been raped, just been abused, and she hasn't told anyone till this date. She tells us the story, and we ask her if we can take those details down. She knocks on the door on a clock, and the first thing she sees is a warm, loving, safe, women-only environment. Not in what she was imagining at all. It's cosy, it's friendly, and she's just surrounded by people who are interested and care about her. She sees there's a doctor's surgery that day. She can actually see a doctor and have the first checkup in many, many years. While she's waiting to see the doctor, She can rummage through the wardrobe and choose some clean clothing like maybe she's never had before. Fashionable, lovely clothing that's been donated by our supporters. We encourage her to take a shower before she puts on her clean clothing, so she can take a shower, she can wash her hair, she can have some clean clothing, she can enjoy a hot meal, and then she can see the doctor. This is so new to Crystal that, you know, it's something she never imagined was out there for her. She then meets with her caseworker, our sexual violence and abuse caseworker, who can give her the support she needs to make the first steps towards leaving this violent partner. So there starts to be a glimmer of hope for her, and the life starts to look very different for Crystal from this day onwards. So if we zoom forward 3 months, life will be looking different. Perhaps she's not had to go out to sex work for 3 months because she's been given access to drug treatment services, and she's got a script, and she doesn't need to go out and earn that money anymore or so regularly. She's in a safe house now, and she's away from that violent partner. She's coming to 125 regularly and starting to build relationships, healthier relationships with workers, with people who care, with volunteers and staff. So I know it's got a happy ending, but that's very typical of the way that our support goes, and very typical of a woman that we work with, the women we work with. We see about 235 women a year, what we did last year, very similar to Crystal. All got their own stories, all got their own journeys that they're walking on, but that's very typical, that story. And those, out of that 235 women we saw last year, 150 of them were on the streets, regularly working, and we'd see them on our outreach van. Our outreach van is out there 5 nights a week. The other women are all women, maybe like the other kind of, 80 women or so that we worked with last year. Some of them would have been working with preventatively to try and ensure that they don't end up on the streets. And the rest of them we'd be working with to help them maintain an exit, to help them stay off the streets. So yeah, that's the service in a nutshell. I'm very happy to take some questions. I hope that that's enough information to get us going. I'm sure you've got lots of questions about the service. So can we go forward, maybe have a bit of discussion, and I can hear your questions.
So how do you actually get involved in volunteering for 125? Is it like an open thing? Like, is there a training and students get involved?
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can get involved anyway, and I have left leaflets out here for you. But we do run introductory evenings, information evenings, about 4 times a year, and you can find out about them on the website, where you can come and hear about volunteering opportunities at 125. If you're 20 or over, you can get involved in the frontline work. We also have volunteering opportunities in fundraising, in the office, in back of office stuff, supporting services as in baking cakes and providing donations, collecting donations. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can get involved. I'd encourage you all to go onto Facebook and follow us and to like us and support us in that way as well, because that spreads the word of what we do. We also run, I've got a leaflet here, and they're all at the front, various events. I brought an events calendar with me, so it spells out all the different events that we run, and we really encourage you to get involved in some of those events. Coming up next month is Give It Up. So this is this little leaflet. And this is something I would really encourage you to get involved in and sign up for. It's a matter of giving something up, something quite extreme, because it's only for 125 hours or 5 days. So then you encourage people to sponsor you for whatever you've given up. there's a lot more information about that on the website as well. So please take these cards and please sign up. So there's that. So lots of different ways. And there's more information here about annual review and just a little leaflet about who we are as well.
Drugs were a very frequent theme of your talk and also from Julia, from Bristol's problems and her boyfriend involvement in drugs and the issues that stem from that. To what extent do you think these problems could be changed by liberalisation of drugs policy?
Oh my goodness, we don't get too involved in drugs policy. So yeah, I really find that quite a hard question to answer. I suppose you're saying to relax the laws on drugs so they don't become
I'm suggesting that perhaps if people were able to go to drugs clinics or something,
yeah.
Even if there wasn't a legalisation of drugs in the United Kingdom, there was a decriminalisation, then perhaps that, I don't know the extent that could contribute to this discussion.
Yeah. I think that the drugs themselves are not as I don't know how to word this. They're not as harmless as we all imagine. It's the activity, it's the illegal activity around drugs, so needle sharing, and the lack of hygiene and injecting without good medical practice, and those are the things that really are the most dangerous things. So, we were always trying to reduce the harm of drugs by giving them clean needles, giving them safe drug, educating them in safe drug practice, and encouraging them all to take a script, which is similar to what you're saying, a substitute for heroin, which means that they don't need so much heroin in their bodies, while they can then contemplate longer change. I don't like the idea of women being on a methadone script for life, but I do think it has a place where it can just provide, it means they don't have to be out there 24/7 looking for the next fix. They can actually feed that habit in a legal way while they work on a longer term solution, which would be made more like a rehab, where they can get the support they need to help them to come off the drugs longer term, because women don't take drugs without a reason, or men don't. People don't. I think there's usually a reason why people take drugs. It's a sort of self-medication. It's a way of dulling pain, and it's very often emotional pain. So I think that you need to get to the root of that. Women need good support when they're ready to face whatever issues led them to take drugs in the first place. And in the story I highlighted, that would be abuse of the past, lack of a loving family, and all of that pain. And when women start sex working, it layers up, because they're actually getting abused, sexually abused, physically abused, and they're engaging in sexual practice that they probably would want to try and dull the memory of that with drugs as well. So yeah, I don't think I particularly answered your question, but I think anything that means they don't have to be out there 24/7 earning money for drugs is going to help. But I think you do have to get to the root of the problem and help people to recover long term so they have a full fulfilled life.
Sorry, you may have already said this, but so do you offer counselling for these women, like long-term counselling, or just support to find that?
Yeah, there's more support to find that.
Okay.
We don't offer counselling, but we do have really specialist workers who can motivate and come alongside and encourage. They're not counsellors, although some of them do have counselling experience. Particularly one of our workers is a mental health outreach worker, so she's had a lot more training. And also our drug treatment caseworker has had a lot of training and counselling. So they do have that experience, but we're not a counselling agency. but we do refer into those agencies. And women, again, when they're really steeped in the complex and all the multiple issues, it's not, and really heavily using drugs, that's not always the best time to get into a counselling relationship. Sometimes they need to wait until they're into their recovery and ready for that, further into their recovery, or in the safety of the rehab unit.
As an organisation, do you believe that the legalisation of brothels would change your workload at all? Do you think it might reduce the amount of women on the streets, or not particularly?
The legalisation of brothels, I don't think it would make a vast difference to women on the streets, because from my experience, the women in brothels and parlours have a very different set of circumstances than the women we meet on the streets. They do have their own set of complex issues, but they're not the same, and it's not driven by drugs. And I will say that the women we see on the streets, 99.9% of them are there to earn money for drugs. It's completely driven by drugs. It's a life-controlling addiction, and that's hard to imagine. If people have never taken drugs, how the control that has on your life. But I don't think that's necessarily the same in the parlours. It's women with a different set of circumstances, probably more driven out from poverty and the need to earn money than it is through drugs.
So just following on from what you were saying, I feel maybe the complete legalisation would make it very easy, for more methods of, like a business owner gaining, I feel maybe what you're trying to say, that the business owner gaining from these women,
Yes.
Rather than them kind of obviously being forced into something. They don't do the gain is sort of theirs, or the gain, the financial gain. So the idea of somebody financially gaining from these women in like a business model doesn't sit.
Well, it's legal pimping, isn't it? And the women who would likely be exploited and become the workers there are often women with low self-esteem who have had a lifetime of abuse, and they're women that need support. And where would that support come from? Because we wouldn't be welcomed in to go and support them at all.
Is there like a community amongst the sex workers then? Do the women know each other, and is there one area of Bristol where this tends to go on?
Yes. Yeah, so in Bristol there are very set areas, and they're the areas where our van drives around at night. So as I said, our van's out there 5 nights a week, and we drive around the known areas of Fish Ponds, Eastville, St Paul's. We know the areas, very defined, has been for many years, a little bit of movement from one area to another. But generally it's close to where the women are storing drugs. It's in an area where they know there's CCTV and they know they can be seen because that makes them feel safe. Unfortunately for Bristol, some of it is in residential areas, which makes that very difficult for policing, because the police will be responding not just to supporting women, because the police do view the women as victims and work closely with us to offer support, but also they're responding to the community who complain, and so they don't want sex work on their doorstep. So that makes it tricky. But yeah, Bristol, it's a very defined area.
So when the women come to you and they're in a recovery phase, or they're kind of coming out of that,
Yeah.
what sort of pathways do you support these women creating and kind of moving away, like sustainably away from street work?
Well, our workers specialise in finding suitable housing. So sometimes that just looks like a hostel or a safe house, depending on the woman. So suitable housing and getting them onto the housing specialist and trying to find some sort of safe housing. Because many of the women we work with who are on the streets, they're hidden homeless. So they're sofa surfing, they're staying with punters and paying for their keep in sexual favours, they're with abusive partners, like the story I highlighted. So yeah, housing is key, somewhere safe, a safe roof over your head. So housing, finance. Many of the women are in debt. They need to start thinking about how to manage that debt, how to manage the bit of income they have. So if they're accessing benefits, how do they wisely spend those benefits so they don't blow it all on drugs in the first hour they get it, that sort of thing. So our workers work with them around those issues. Drug treatment, criminal justice. Many of the women have got records of offending or they're in and out of prison. And our criminal justice caseworker is in prison every week, visiting the women, working with them while they're in prison, working on support plans for when they come out of prison, so that we have that continuity of support right through when they're in and out again. Otherwise we lose that continuity if we don't have that support in place. Another worker is our mental health worker, so she's working with the health of the women. All of the workers will be promoting life skills, life change, helping the women to motivate them for change, build their esteem, link them in with other services, link them in with counselling services if that's necessary, link them in with the police, link them in with health services, register them with GPs, help them to visit a dentist, whatever their needs are. The team, over the years, we've built up our team so that we can respond to just about all the needs the women have in a very flexible and person-centred way. So we'll walk with them at their pace and ensure that the help they need at that time is in place. It can take weeks, months and many, many years. Every woman's journey is different, and some women do make very speedy recoveries and move out of sex work, and other women it's a much more in-out, revolving door story. And some women we work with for many years and then we see them break free. Something happens often, something life-changing like a death or a really violent attack, or something triggers them to say, I've had enough of this, I want out, and then they really put their mind to change.
What would you say has been the biggest challenges that you've faced as a charity in the time that you've worked with 125?
Gosh, there's been so many challenges. But yeah, I mean, it sounds really boring, but finance and funding is always a challenge because it's not the most popular type of charity or type of work, and so getting funds to support women in sex work and who are addicts is not always easy. It's much easier to fundraise for children, cancer patients, animals, donkeys even, than it is for sex workers, So we can't use the women really in our marketing. I couldn't bring a woman with me tonight and have her tell her story herself. I'd love to. It'd be tons better than me trying to tell a story. But, can't do that because, so that's not easy. You can't sort of wheel her out and market her and photograph her and broadcast her story to the world. We would never do that. So that's been a challenge all the years, really. And I think the challenge of trying to work with the changing demographic, the changing environment that women work in, I've seen it change. When I first started working with 125 as a volunteer, that was 2002, 2001, we'd see 30, 40 women out on the streets at night. And now we struggle to find the women. We see, if we're lucky, we see 8 women a night. So that's been a real challenge, is how do we reach women when they're more hidden. There are less numbers of women out, so that's a good thing. But I think they're also more hidden from us. They're working through phones, they're hiding in the shadows more, they're dodging the police, they're dodging the residents. It's not easy to find the women to give them the support. So that's been a challenge too. So I'll just go to you, because I see your hand.
Just going on from what you said about the police, I was just wondering sort of how well they work with you, because I work in domestic abuse and violence, and not saying that all police are not helpful, but some of them really aren't.
No.
So I was wondering if you had a similar experience, sort of how helpful are they with you keeping your women safe?
Well, we work closely with them, and that's the way that we keep the women safe, is by us working closely with the police, and we train the police. Our workers go in and train the police in understanding the women's lives, understanding the needs, because many new young officers don't get it. They don't, they won't understand the lives of the women, the abuse they've suffered, how to talk to them, how to treat them. We have seen over the years some appalling stories, and we've heard some appalling stories of the way women have been treated by the police. And we've challenged that every time. And I'm thankful to say that we don't see much of that anymore, because since we've been training the police, and the police have changed their methods, and they're much more sympathetic towards the women working there. They've come down heavily on the punters, but they're more sympathetic towards the women. We have seen a shift. We don't hear so many of those bullyish, roguish police officers anymore. So things have improved. Obviously they've got a different agenda to us, and as I said earlier, when the residents, but because our van teams are often purely volunteers, and we want to keep our staff and our volunteers safe, we don't encourage them to get out of the van. Sometimes we wind the window down and just say to a woman, draw up close to her and say, do you know us for 125, perhaps give her a leaflet. But mostly the women do recognise us, even if it's their first night out working. Another worker, or even the police, have said to them, look out for 125's van, it's white with a yellow roof, and it drives around the area, and there's always women in the front. And so they're kind of looking out for us, and they recognise us. Over the years, you just get to know. Occasionally you make a mistake, and you're thinking, she isn't she? No, she's not. Yes, she is. So you have to do a bit of that. But yeah, you get to know the behaviours. The women, are looking into the traffic much more than perhaps somebody who's just looking for a bus. You would see the difference. So we look for the signs. Often we can tell in the way they're dressed, whether they're carrying a handbag, all sorts of things. And often we're trying to get a bit of eye contact, and we'll recognise the thing. If they recognise us, we'll know it. Sometimes they give us a little nod, or they'll do that, like not now. They don't want us at that moment or whatever.
Do you find that with that the punters in the area know about your van, and is it kind of like a secret among the women, or is there animosity directed against towards the van?
We don't get a lot of people bothering us. The punters don't often do know. I've been out in the van, and we've had a car pull right up behind us, where a woman must have said to her punter, drop me there, drop me at the van, and he's dropped her. Sometimes he's waited for her to come back out and get in the car. So we see a bit of that. Likewise with the boyfriends and the pimps, they kind of hang around while she's working, and they're watching her, and they're watching the registration of the car she gets in. So they're sometimes almost working as a pair, the woman and her boyfriend. I think the punters and the pimps, they all know who we are, but we don't get a lot of trouble from it. So after all, women get food and sandwiches and often go and share them. So. But we don't give food to their male partners, but I know that you probably share it.
Thank you very much for coming. It's been really informative, and everyone knows a lot more about 125, so do get involved in the upcoming events, take leaflets, there's pens and a donation pot, and free coffee vouchers for BTP, so do sort of walk along the front as you go. Thank you so much, Jill, that's really fabulous. Should be coming out sort of in the next couple of days, so watch out for it, share it, subscribe. Please support FemX. Woo.